Yumi and Mizuto are brothers from the same family. She came here to live because Mizuto's father remarried to Yumi's mother. Her mother went out to hand Yumi over to Mizuto. He was annoyed but said yes, of course Yumi was too. Seeing Yumi and Mizuto washing the dishes, the grandparents sighed when they were of the same age and got along like that. Yumi approached Mizuto reminding him to keep their past secret. Later, he was sitting in his room reading a book when Yumi came to his room. She didn't accept Mizuto calling her name directly. She wanted Mizuto to call her sister. Although both were born on the same day, she was born 30 minutes before Mizuto, so she was entitled to be an older sister. Mizuto didn't care at all. It's not going anywhere, so he wants to play a game with her. Both of them pretend to get along in front of their parents. Whoever reveals a loophole will be the younger brother from now on. Mizuto thought for a moment and then agreed. Yumi immediately ran to the closet to get a book. He was annoyed to stop Yumi. It's not okay in this room, there's only a desk drawer that you can't show anyone. Yumi was about to find out when Mizuto stood up and gently advised Yumi not to fight anymore. Seeing his gesture made Yumi accidentally call his last name. So this match had to call Mizuto by his brother. Yumi angrily left the room. The next day they both went to school together. Yumi reminded Mizuto that she would go to private school tomorrow, to which Mizuto of course agreed. After returning to class, a group of girls gathered around Yumi. During the opening ceremony, she represented the students to speak. Mizuto has a hard time as she has a higher score than him. At some point, the boys gathered to ask about Mayato. They find Yumi cute. They approached him just because they wanted to get to know Yumi. As soon as she got to the stairs, Yumi stopped her. She was very upset when the boys didn't have the courage to talk to her but had to go around Mizuto. Mizuto didn't care about this at all. The next day at school, Yumi followed Mizuto. The boys saw that Mizuto was about to start a conversation when Yumi ran up to him and took his hand and led him away. Mizuto also didn't understand what this girl was doing. That evening when her parents came home late, Mizuto showed off her cooking skills for Yumi. She reminded Mizuto to forget about the incident from the morning. Mizuto sneered without needing to remind him that he forgot. Yumi got angry, what to do to erase that cold face of his. So Yumi immediately thought of a way. After taking a shower, wrapped each towel and sat in front of Mizuto making him choke on his face and turn red. This was exactly what Yumi was expecting, but she thought to herself, like this isn't she seducing him. Mizuto threw Yumi the shirt, knowing she wanted to make fun of her but it wouldn't be nice to let other people see it. He still thanked him when Yumi cared about him. Embarrassed, she was about to run back to her room when she tripped over Mizuto. He started gaining momentum when his parents returned. Yumi hid under the cupboard. It was only a matter of time before successfully eradicating this hatred. Episode 2. Today has a PE class. Mizuto was reading a book when a guy approached and wanted to go with him. He repeated that being close to him wouldn't do any good, because a liar like him couldn't get close to Yumi. The other boy sneered and introduced himself as Kogure. The only person who wanted to be friends with Mizuto wasn't because of Yumi. This took Mizuto by surprise. Not only Mizuto, but also Yumi was later caught by a female student who kept staring at her soul. It was so big and round it made her jealous. Yumi encourages the Minami. Actually, in middle school, she was just like this. Minami can be like this with just hard work. Hearing Yumi's encouragement, Minami was moved to hug her. Thanks to that, the two became friends to take the fitness test together. In middle school Yumi was just a weak girl and Minami was much stronger than the boys. Yumi did her best on the test but still got an average score. Mizuto's side, on the other hand, was as nonchalant as ever. On subsequent tests Yumi tried harder, eventually scoring above average. But she was also exhausted and fell. Mizuto appeared in time to help her. He knew well enough to observe her from now on. Minami took Yumi to the infirmary. Minami now admits that although Yumi's academic performance and appearance is great, she is not arrogant. So they became close friends. A while after Yumi got better, they led each other out to find Mizuto in front of the door. As he stood guard without admitting it, Minami smiled. Due to overexertion, Yumi fell ill the next day. Mizuto had to go to school alone. Yumi was nowhere to be seen. Minami approached Mizuto and asked. Kogure pulled her away. Minami began to criticize Kogure for approaching Mizuto because of Yumi. Kogure doesn't care that his only hobby is watching other people fall in love. Minami begged Mizuto to come visit Yumi's house. On the way Minami asked Mizuto a lot. Opening the door to the room, Yumi had a high fever and hallucinations. She saw Mizuto's figure again and called him over. Mizuto startled and reminded Yumi, who had regained consciousness. Minami then dragged Mizuto to cook porridge. After cooking the porridge, Minami herself fed the porridge to Yumi, then she left with peace of mind. Mizuto went back up to Yumi's room. Although she was weak at this time, she still had to tease Mizuto. Since when is Mizuto so close to Minami? Yumi recalled the past, she didn't want it to happen at all. Mizuto promised not to do it again this time. She put Mizuto's hand on her chest and fell asleep. Mizuto recalled back in middle school, when Yumi was still a bookworm. They came together because of the same interests, but because of misunderstanding, they broke up. This time, in an ironic situation, he did not let go of her hand anymore. After that, Mizuto took care of Yumi very carefully. It turned out that Yumi was deliberately faking his illness to make Mizuto very angry but didn't blame her. On the contrary, he gently said good night and then left, making Yumi's face red. Volume 3. This child was Yumi 1 year ago. At that time she kept what Mizuto gave her. Yumi just made small pants out of nowhere. She put it up to her nose and sniffed it and threw it away. She's not the little girl she was a year ago, she has to find a way to return these little pants. Yumi pressed her ear against the wall to see the situation. Mizuto's side still hadn't slept. She had to read books to kill time until he went to sleep. After hearing no more noises, she crept out of the room. As he stood in front of Mizuto's room door, he came out, holding Yumi's bra. The two pulled into the living room for a family meeting. They decided to explain first by rock paper scissors. So Yumi must be the first. She used the excuse that she found it in the bathroom at the same time her mother came in, so Yumi was too scared to take it back to her room. Coincidentally, Mizuto was in the same situation as her. This is a violation of the sibling law. Both have definitely done nothing with each other's stuff. Now they had to do something about this current misunderstanding. Because each person is wrong, each person has the right to order the other one thing. Mizuto agreed, but outside, they were just normal sisters. The next day at school, Yumi saw Mizuto with another girl. She began to inquire about female friends with such appearance. Minami didn't even know who it was when she heard about it because there were too many worms in the school. Yumi brought her anger home. She was startled when she saw a pair of women's shoes in the house. Yumi took out her phone and took a picture of the evidence. She then called Mizuto to go out and buy things for her. She stood in the room waiting for the sound to leave and then rushed over to Mizuto's room with the aim of capturing the child alive. How the hell Mizuto walked out without leaving? Yumi dashed downstairs and the shoes were gone. She reproached Mizuto. Matuzo was about to enter the kitchen when he saw an unusual chair there. Mizuto ran up to the room, making Yumi not understand what was going on. That night Mizuto could tell no matter how she looked at it, it was the girl who did it. A few days ago, while reading a book in the library, someone approached Mizuto asking to marry her. It turned out that the nerd girl was Minami. She wants to marry Mizuto so she can be with Yumi all day. He told everything to Kogure. The boy laughed but also reminded Mizuto to be careful. Koguro tells Mizuto something about Minami. She had a boyfriend in middle school, and Minami was obsessed with him all day. But only 3 months later he worked so hard that he had to be hospitalized. Minami's biggest fear is spending too much time playing with something she likes. Now Yumi is her target. Koguro showed Mizuto a way. He ran across the room to call Yumi. The contract was requested by the other party once before. Mizuto wanted Yumi to go on a date with her tomorrow. Episode 4, the next day, as Mizuto wished, Yumi was waiting for him at the rendezvous point. However, she still suspected he had something to do with her. Yumi didn't freeze, she quickly turned her face away, unable to believe that the person standing there was Mizuto. Their meeting place today is the aquarium. While waiting for the line manager, Yumi stood and peeped at him shyly. Suddenly Mizuto took Yumi's hand and led her away. They led each other away without noticing that there were 2 people behind them watching them. It turned out to be Kogure and Minami. Kogure had already explained the plan for this date to Mizuto very well. What should he do to show Minami their feelings for each other? This time it was Kogure who dressed him up to go out. No wonder it surprised Yumi. As Kogure taught, the first thing he should do is compliment a girl's dress. Looking at Yumi, Mizuto struggled to get a compliment, but Mizuto's way of speaking was still too stiff. Even though it seemed like a failure, Yumi still shyly thanked him. The two stood watching the fish while Yumi kept glancing at Mizuto. Suddenly he pulled Yumi closer to him. She didn't understand why he was so bold today. Mizuto was standing while noticing that he felt like Yumi kept glaring at him. He ran to the bathroom to ask for help from Koguro. Kogure also only helped here, from now on everything will be decided by Mizuto. As for Yumi's side, because her toilet was too far from the meeting place, she lost her way now. She just had to sit in a corner and wait. A phone call called Mizuto. He told Yumi to stay still so he could go and find it. Yumi recalled the old memories. The first time the two met to go to a festival together, she was also lost like this. Yumi sadly sat there feeling like she was a burden to Mizuto. At that moment Mizuto found her. Even now, he can still find it, but not like before. Instead of consoling him, he joked about Yumi. After that, the two went out together in the park, and didn't leave until late in the evening. Yumi asked permission to run forward, only then Minami appeared. She used the excuse that she happened to meet them here. She folded her hands and sincerely apologized to Mizuto about the last time she broke into his house. He wouldn't tell Yumi about it. Meanwhile Yumi had returned home. She racked her brain thinking that the strange thing that Mizuto did today must have been on purpose. By this time Mizuto had just arrived home, and Yumi was standing at the door waiting for him. Yumi is now claiming her benefits from the previous case. She asked Mizuto to pose for her photo. Everything is back to normal. Mizuto and Koguro stood side by side looking at the other two girls. Mizuto suddenly asked if Kogure had been in the hospital, and Koguro didn't deny it either. Maybe he was Minami's ex-boyfriend.